So welcome everyone to the Money in Your Mind seminar. I hope you guys are excited.
Yes.
Good, because we have a lot of ground to cover. I've kind of figured whilst putting all this stuff together for you guys, I've kind of tried to crush 4 days worth of content into 2 days. So we're going to really hit the ground running and get a lot of things done. Let me just set some expectations before we begin. The first thing to realize is this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. I'm not going to try and sell you some land deal or some pie in the sky. This has nothing to do with those sort of things. There are millions of opportunities out there for making lots of cash. And what I want you to do is create the mindset, the ability inside your mind to see those opportunities rather than walk past them, to notice the fakes and spot them and know exactly why they're really bad deals, and you'll know exactly how to spot them by the time we finish here. And to be able to, there's kind of like an instinct inside some people. I've noticed that there are some very, very wealthy people I've had the good fortune to hang out with. They have an instinct for not just making money, but letting it continue to make money. So before we actually kind of dive into any of the content, and there's a whole bunch of promises I want to make you guys about what we'll be doing in this seminar. The first thing I want to do is, seeing as this kind of little fun thing, is let's get a little excited here. Who here wants to get wealthy? Anyone?
Oh, sure.
Who wants to be just rich and have no more money worries and just do stuff with it? Now, you know, we all have like dreams, ambitions of like, if money was no object, what would you do with it? What kind of things would you really want? Just an instinct. What's the kind of thing? Get a big boat, get a big house, fly to the moon, buy the moon. What you want to have a horse farm, right? I'll have here, horse, we'll spell it. A horse farm. What other things would you like to do with it? Just throw them out.
Buy John's house.
Microphones? Oh, buy this house, yes. So, $1 million mansion, right? Or several $1 million, as the place that we're in here is worth 16. Exactly. Million plus, here we go. So, get a nice big house.
With an airstrip and an airplane.
Can we grab the mics, folks, and just pass them around?
In keeping with my wife's
horse
farm,
yeah.
I would love to have, have it in the country with an airstrip and an airplane.
Airstrip and plane.
To be able to go where I wanted to go, and so far away that that's the way to get in.
Perfect. I like that. Does this? You guys getting a little more juice out of this whole thing? Yeah. What else would you want to do with that?
Actually, I'd like to set up a microbank.
A microbank. Okay, I like that. We'll put that over here. We'll talk about what microbanks are in a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, similar kind of thing to be able to empower other people and help them.
Very nice, right? Anything else? Go ahead, Arthur. Do you want to grab a mic?
I'd like to be able to fund my aging research.
Aging research, so fund research, right? Okay, it's interesting. I kind of like this because, what is the kind of typical thing that people ask for when you say, oh, if I won $1 million, what are the kind of things they say? I would buy a big house, right? I'd buy, what's the other one? The classic one is the boat, the house, the fast car. Actually, you had it here with the plane and so on. Now, here's what I find very interesting, and this is something we're going to get into as the seminar goes on. When we invited you to come here, and we've invited... this was an invitation-only seminar, as you know, over 550 people plus almost 600 people asked to be invited, and of course you guys were, well done. When we invited people, one of the things we were very specific, what we wanted to do is make sure we have a whole cross-section of society, from doing really well to doing not so well and in between. Does that make sense? Now, what I find really interesting is the higher the income level is, the more the kind of dreams and aspiration you have with wealth actually match creating more wealth. Yeah. The lower your income level tends to be, the more your aspirations actually create poverty. And we'll show you exactly how that works and how to switch the mindset around. There's, by the way, nothing wrong with anything on this list. Nothing. Right? It's just the way people traditionally fund them will either make them rich or poor. Now, I want to make you a couple of promises as a result of what we'll be doing here. Right? The first promise is, I'm going to show you exactly how the super rich think to avoid certain things on this list impoverishing them. So they can still have them, but in a way that actually does not they don't risk losing it all. I'm going to show you how to spot opportunities in the very same mindset so that you're freed to enjoy things without having to worry about it. The key thing here is financial freedom. For me, the idea of financial freedom is not necessarily having $1 million in the bank. In fact, that's probably the worst place to have it. It's to be able to risk the rest of your life on whatever standard of living you like without having to work again. Now, if you choose to work, that's one thing. Then you can do your research, you can start a microbank, you can do whatever it is you want. But the point is, financial freedom comes before wealth. You see, a lot of people think they need to reach up and find all these fantastic things, live this amazing lifestyle and so on. And again, let me emphasize, there's nothing wrong with this lifestyle. But the problem is, on the way there, if people miss the financial freedom step, then this is very temporary. And it'll be there one day and gone the next.
Is that why people who win the lottery tend to lose all their money?
Exactly. So we're coming on to that as we go through the thing. And this is a well-documented case. Most people who win the lottery or come into a sudden inheritance or big money, within, usually it's within a year or so, sometimes it's within 2 or 3 years, they don't just come back to the position they were in before they started, they're usually worse off. And it has to do with a mental blueprint of what money is, how it works, what it does, and what you do with it. It has to do with a mental blueprint about how much money you're allowed to have. What I'd like to do is show you what that blueprint is, show you where the mistakes are that most people have, show you why people, even if they're earning $1 million incomes, can still be on the poverty line, and how to switch that around. Go ahead.
When I was a financial advisor, I worked for the Bank of the Florida Lottery.
Mm-hmm.
So people were paid with a bank check, and we got to advise a lot of those people. And it was very common. They had one lottery that people would win $500,000 or $600,000, enough money to change a lot of lives.
Mm-hmm.
But of the ones that I worked with, there was only one who kept that money for more than about 18 months.
Right.
They normally had, and we would advise them, think about how much you need that you want to spend, and then we would suggest, well, do twice that. You know, they would say, well, I just want to keep 30,000. We'd say, keep 60.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would talk about investing the rest. But within literally months, they would have blown through all of the 60. They would be calling up, selling these theoretically life-changing long-term investments that they had. And usually within 12 to 18 months, it was all gone. And they've done studies that show people who win those types of lotteries, particularly the one-time payment lotteries, are worse off mentally because now they have the scar of having had all of that, and now that it's disappeared, and they're looking back and thinking that they've blown it all.
Now, we'll come on to that, and there's a lot of beliefs around money, about wealth, people who have money, good, bad, and indifferent. One of the key ideas I want you to have is that money does not make you good or bad. And we will explore exactly how that works as we investigate the mindset, the blueprints, and so on. What money does do is it throws fuel on whatever fire is already burning. If you're a good person, money will make you great. If you're a bad person or have a little dodgy streak inside you, it will expose that flaw. It'll make that worse. And you see this happening all the time with people who suddenly get very rich. Their flaws get exposed because they never had a chance to work on them, and it amplifies things. So to the extent that you're willing to just work on yourself as an individual, then actually becoming wealthy is something I would consider to be a duty, because your ability to do good things in the world to your friends, your families, the people you love, and even your community or the larger community of the world, that starts to skyrocket. Now, here's a couple of promises I want to make in terms of the things that we will be covering over the next few days. Number one, I'd like to show you the keys in terms of how you think, how you behave, what you do, what you recognize, how you educate yourself, and so on, that will make you wealthier than you will allow yourself to dream of right now. Let me just put this quite straight. A lot of you, if I say you want to be rich, hands go up, right? But if I ask you, how rich can you actually be? How much are you going to actually aim for? For a lot of people, the ceiling starts coming down to what's quote-unquote realistic, 600,000, 500,000, 100,000, who knows? By the time we finish here, I'm going to show you how to reach that ceiling so high that right now it would scare you to even think about it. And it is actually within very graspable, within your means. I'll give an example, and I will talk about this later a little bit more. I'm going to show you how a little old lady from, I don't know, somewhere in the Midwest in America, I think it was, who had no formal education, never had a, should we say, a white-collar job. She was always wearing very basic jobs like fish filleting and so on. She ended up with a personal fortune of $4.5 million. And I'm going to show you exactly how she did that. Would you like to know? So in the course of this program, we'll show you exactly how she did that, and it's replicable. Anyone can do it if they apply themselves in a certain way. Does that make sense? I'd like to expose to you the key mental mistakes that keeps the poor poor and the middle class struggling. I'd like to show you how income has absolutely no bearing on wealth. You can have someone like the little old lady who was basically working an hourly wage, a basic income. I doubt she ever made more than $10 an hour. And she ended up with $4.5 million. And how someone else, a doctor or a lawyer, might make $1 million a year, but end up with nothing. It's a mindset. The mindset dictates certain habits. Those habits create wealth or destroy it. I'd like to show you the exact habits that destroy wealth so you can stop them if you find yourself in that route. I'd like to show you the exact habits that actually create wealth so you can encourage them and do more of them. Does that make sense? I have a big grab bag here, so I'm just going to do some of the highlights here for you, mate, because otherwise we'll be here for like 2 days just telling you what we'll be doing the next 2 days, right? One of the keys here is the super rich look at the world with a different set of eyes. Let me give you an example, and we'll unfold this more as we go through. Anyone here ever wear sort of colored, tinted glasses, like rose or red or something like that? And you notice how the world changes. There are certain colors you can no longer distinguish. You have a pink piece of paper, a red piece of paper, a white piece of paper. If you're wearing red glasses, they all look the same, don't they? The things that people do when they are keeping themselves poor or struggling in the middle class is that their minds have a certain filter, much like those glasses. And all the opportunities that will make them wealthy. Right now, believe it or not, every single person in this room has more than ample opportunities existing in your life. You know about them already to make you over $1 million. They exist right this minute. And the only reason you're thinking inside your mind right now, no way. I know some of you are like, he doesn't know my life. There's no way I have it. If I had those opportunities, I'd take them right now. But the only reason you're not taking those opportunities is because you cannot see them. There's a filter in place. It will delete certain information because you don't even know to look for it. You're not sensitized to it. So I'm going to show you how to see the world through wealthy eyes, where you will see just an abundance, an overabundance of possibilities for making so much money you'll wake up every morning grinning from ear to ear, thanking God for just one more day. Let me see some other little things we have here ready for you. Yeah, I mean, we could go on all day here, but really, what I'm looking here to do is, you know the fairy tale of the goose that laid the golden egg? Now, one thing which we'll come on to very, very, very soon is most people come across at least a dozen of these geese in their lifetime. But you know what they do when they find these geese? They kill them, they have dinner, they go, that was nice. When am I ever going to make my fortune? Everyone in this room have lived long enough that you've had at least 4, 5, 6 big opportunities like this. Some of you have taken them, and it's been great. Some of you have taken it for a while, and just like in the fairy tale, after a while you thought, I want more. Let's see where this goose is getting it from. And then you opened it up, and then, of course, the goose was dead. And some of you have never even seen the goose. You ate it was tasty. You didn't even think about it. It tasted a bit like chicken. I'd like to show you how to recognize those geese and how to actually care for them so that they end up caring for you. Because one of the things that you want to be focusing on is making money whilst you're sleeping. Right? Now, who am I to make all these big promises to you and so on? Well, I have basically been in every position that you guys find yourself in at some point in my life. Right now, I have the good fortune that I have a multi-million-dollar company. In the last 3 years, We've turned over $10 million in business, and most of that is profit. It's very low expenses in what we're doing. But it's not where I started from. The interesting part is that not so long ago, that would have been an impossibility for me. Now, people might think that's strange when they hear what my background was, because I started off life back in my 20s, in my great youth. I started off life as a lawyer, corporate lawyer, in London. I worked for one of the best law firms in London. It's an international law firm. And when I got the job, I was so excited. You see, I thought I'd made it. Now, if you fast forward, I don't know, a year ago or so, 6 months, a year, 2 years, after I got my training contract, I actually go in and start working. There I am. And I still remember this clearly. One night I was coming home. It was probably this time of year. It's lovely and sunny here in the Bahamas. It was dreary and cold and rainy in London. I get in home. It's, I don't know, probably it's midnight, 1 o'clock. I've been working late again. And most of you would probably feel good when you get home. But for me, the closer I was getting home, the worse I was feeling. And when I open the door, it's very obvious why, because stacked up in the corner, I have all these bills. And some of them have these big, they're big red stamps, final demand. I don't know if you ever had one of those. People get very creative about writing nasty letters. I don't know how just a printed page can create so much fear, but I was dreading these things, because especially when I looked at my bank account, there was not so much in there, and it wouldn't match what these bills were demanding. I was in pretty bad shape. How could I get this position? I did everything I was told to do. I mean, when I was young, when I was at school, my teachers told me the same thing they probably told you, which is work hard, right? Apply yourself. Get a good education. Get a good job. You get paid well, then you'll make in life, and you'll be able to breeze through life, enjoy yourself, have all the good things that life has to offer, and retire and enjoy retirement. Isn't that what everyone gets told? And I believed them. I worked hard. I did well in school. I went to a decent school, not the best. I went to university. I went to a very good university, not the best. Whilst in university, I had the great fortune that some of my family members, actually from the States, they started sharing with me these special mind training exercises that have been developed into a whole kind of mental self-improvement system. And they're based on the kind of things that NASA was using with their astronauts to prepare them for spaceflight. The Olympic athletes were using these to win just whole rows of medals. And it's a very exciting time. And they shared these ideas. I started doing this. University suddenly got easier. Studying got easier. And I thought, this is great. Then, towards the end of my university career, you're allowed to apply for positions in law firms. There's a cut-off line when you're allowed to do it. So I had to wait. And I thought, why don't I just prepare myself in the same way as I prepared myself for exams, by preparing myself for an interview? Because it's really the same thing, isn't it? So I prepared myself, I remember, for 6 months, every single day, morning, evening, lunchtime. I prepared myself for this interview. And it was a particular law firm that I had in my mind, because they'd come in, they'd give them, it's called the milk round, they come around, they give these presentations, and it was exciting. They were talking about cases that were in the news. They were talking about working with, multi-million and billion-dollar accounts. I think, this is it. If I'm gonna make it in life, there's no better place, is there? So I really applied myself. I even went to a different law firm for an interview, and I bombed. Why? Because my mind was so focused on this one, it wouldn't even let me contemplate going somewhere else. I walked in the door, and yes, I was nervous, and I was kind of excited, and the whole adrenaline rush and so on. But the weirdest thing is, when I walked in, something inside me had clicked. It felt like, this is it. This is where I'm going to go. This is where I'm going to work. The interview just blew by. I think they spent an extra half hour with me, and I walked out, and you don't try and tell yourself, well, I don't know. How do you do? I don't know. You know how people do that, right? But inside, I said, that's it. I'm going to have this. I know. But I couldn't let myself know, you know what I mean? I know, some 2-3 weeks later, I get the letter. They've invited me to come join them as a lawyer. That was one of the most exciting days of my life. Because as far as I'm concerned, I've got it made now. I have what I think is the best law firm in the world, certainly the best one in England. They want me. The salaries are not bad, right, as you can imagine. Not only that, but they're going to pay for my law school. They're going to pay extra so that I can afford to live through my law school. I don't even have to get into borrow money from my parents or from the student loans company and like that. They'll take care of all that. I have a job at the end of all that, a good job. Everything I've been told at school was coming true, and I was excited. So what I'd like to do to start the whole process off here is I'd like to start sharing with you some of these mind training exercises that I ran myself through. I've since evolved them and worked on them and made them a little bit better, so that you can start using the same things yourself. Because remember, we're talking about wealth here, right? Wealth is a blueprint that we have inside our minds. It's in us. There are enough rags to riches stories. People had nothing to start off with, and they made it big to show that wealth is not a genetic condition or a social condition. There's enough people who started life off with a silver spoon in their mouth and then blew it all to realize that having it doesn't mean you can keep it. There is something inside the mind that lets you make it or destroy it. So really, the mind is where we need to start if we're going to make all these changes. Wouldn't that be fair to say? And the key to any mental development, whether it's you're an Olympic athlete, a NASA space pilot, a racing car driver, or anything else, the key to open the mind up is relaxation. There are other ways to do it, but they're harsher and they're not necessarily as useful. Relaxation is the most consistent and simple to do thing. So what I'd like to do now is start the whole process off with what I call a meme. A meme is simply a money expanding mind, money expanding mind exercise. And I kind of like this because it expands your mind while it expands your money too. To do this is very simple. We're going to actually get the body to remember how it is to be relaxed. Get the mind to remember what it's like to be relaxed. When you have a relaxed mind, you can focus it. When you have a relaxed and focused mind, you can begin to tap abilities inside you that will make you super rich, super successful in whatever endeavors you want to get into. Does this make sense? So the starting point is very simple. We're going to just go through a little process that's going to guide you into a place that you can find anytime again. Does anyone here ever get stressed, by the way? Right? Do you like being stressed? So what you're about to learn is going to eliminate that forever. And in fact, I actually used this very exercise myself once when I was this close to getting fired as a lawyer because I made a big boo-boo. And because of the exercises that are going to come off as a result of this, I managed to resolve it in a way that actually the law firm came out ahead rather than behind. So then I went from being like the worst, to the best. It was a very strange 2 weeks of my life. Now, what we have here is you may hear this sound. It's an unusual sound. The sound has been kind of researched quite extensively. What it does is it allows, your brain works in different gears, shall we say, right? You know how when you go uphill, you don't necessarily want to be in the fifth gear, do you? Unless you have a lot of momentum going through you. So your brain works in similar gears. Some gears are ideal for certain kind of tasks, others are ideal for other kinds of tasks. For the kind of mental exercise we're talking here, which require relaxation and intense focus, the sound is kind of like a lifeline that lets the mind adjust and actually aligns it to allow it to get the right gear level. Have you ever heard what happens when you try and change gear and you get the wrong gear, especially when you have like a manual stick shift or something like that? Is the sound that tells you haven't quite made it, right? But then when it clicks in and just falls right into the right gear, there's a satisfying click. It just goes in the right place. Everything aligns and the car does what it's supposed to do. So this sound does, it helps your mind get there. It won't guarantee it, but then the mental exercise we're going to do will get you there too. So all this does is kind of augments, enhances, and makes it easier to do the mental exercises. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
Cycles per second, is that?
This one's 10 cycles per second. Okay? Because we're looking for relaxation and we're looking for an expanded mindset which is exactly what we're going through, right? There are other gears you can do other things in, but we may come on to some of them in the course of this program. There's some CDs that accompany this. You'll have seen, we will get a copy of them, where we'll actually be playing with some of the other gears as well. For the moment, we're going to focus on the one gear, because this is your workhorse gear as far as expanding your mind and making you do some things for you is. Make sense? So what I'd like you to do is just put your pens and papers down for a moment. So make yourself comfortable. You'll probably find that it's most comfortable when your legs and feet are uncrossed. Whatever works for you. And then whenever you're ready, just make sure you're comfortable, take a deep, satisfying breath, and then just close your eyes. Just take a few moments to listen to the meme sound. Remember, a meme is a mind, or rather a money-expanding mind exercise. Now, as you're listening to the sound, what I'd like you to do for a moment is just think of somewhere in your home where you feel comfortable. It could be your living room, your bedroom, workout room, somewhere where you just feel comfortable. And let's check it out and remember it a little bit. Think about it for a while. And when you're ready, just allow yourself to stop thinking about that, clear your mind again, and come on back. It's just a quick kind of warm-up before we do anything proper. Just bring yourself back. Easy to do so far, right? So did everyone find a simple place to be in? Where did you guys go to? What kind of places did you use? You had your couch at home? I like that, that's good. Anywhere else? You had a chair? Okay. So the act of thinking about something you already know, it's easy, isn't it? How many people actually saw pictures or images inside their mind? Right? How many people did not see a picture or an image inside their mind? Good. The reason I'm saying this is because some people think, oh, what if I can't see pictures and so on? It doesn't matter. Think about the environments that we're going to be describing in the same way as you thought about that special room we just talked about. And that's all you need to do, right? The key here isn't how clearly you can see something, although it does help. That'll come with time. The key here is with how much focus can you concentrate on thought, remembering a particular room, a particular place, and so on. What it does is it triggers associations. The associations open the mind up in the way that we need it to. Does that make sense? And then when you ever here notice that some of your best ideas come to you in the weirdest times, like either in the shower, or when you're just falling asleep, or when you're doing the most random tasks which have nothing to do with work, your best ideas come, right? The reason for that is because the place we're about to take your mind in a moment opens up naturally at those times. So wouldn't it be useful to be able to control when we open and close our minds for those states of superior problem-solving abilities, creativity, and so on? Would that be fair to say? So we do the exercise again, a little bit longer this time. We're going to spend more time in this place. I call it the relaxation room. Why? Because it's a room and you get to relax in it. It's really a no-brainer. Okay? Do you all have a clear idea of what room you'd like to use for relaxation room? It can be anything. I recommend it somewhere you know and feel comfortable in. But if you want to think about somewhere you haven't been, some mythical beach and some mythical kingdom, that's fine. I honestly don't mind. The key is just, as you think about that place, it just feels good. It relaxes you. You don't have to think about anything. You just let your mind drift and enjoy the experience. Does that make sense? So go ahead and make yourself comfortable again. Take a deep, satisfying breath. And then close your eyes. And listen to the sound. Allowing this to remind you about your relaxation room. It's a wonderful place in which your mind and body can relax. All you have to do is listen to the sound and remember that room. And already notice how all of you are experiencing something, some area of comfort that's beginning to develop. Notice how your breathing shifts. Allow yourself to breathe in and breathe out. And relax. In this room, you can leave everything else outside, all thoughts, all concerns. All you need to do here is breathe in, breathe out, and relax. The sound you're hearing will help maintain this. It's like a constant thread, an anchor that holds a ship in place. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. And as you begin to feel the muscles in your body to loosen up, your face just loosening up, your jaw letting go, your shoulders easing, your chest, your back. Maybe a good feeling develops in your stomach area. Arms and hands just relaxing. Hips, legs, feet. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. And enjoy the scenery. Think about this room, look around it. Everything here can remind you of how easy it is to just relax. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. That's it. And as you're feeling more relaxed now, I'd like you to think about, consider, imagine, if you would, picking up a simple notepad. It's just right next to you. And drawing the number 1 on that notepad, a large number 1. As you draw that number 1, look at it and feel satisfied that it's there. That number can be associated with relaxation for you. And any time in the future that you need to relax, all you have to do is think about that notepad, write down that number 1, feel the satisfaction of writing it, and you will relax. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. And enjoy your relaxation room. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. Each time you come back to your relaxation room, it's easier to get in, quicker to relax, easier to carry that relaxation into the rest of your day. The more you practice coming to your relaxation room, the more relaxed you become as a person. Which means things that used to stress you just don't. And because this particular meme, this money expanding mind exercise, it doesn't just teach you how to relax, but allows you to open your mind. You'll find solutions to problems you never even thought about before. So breathe in, breathe out, and relax. That's right. And enjoy it. And remember to come back here often. Because the more you come, the more ingrained the relaxation room becomes. And the relaxation room is the foundation on which everything else is built. So just take a few moments to enjoy that. Even your perception of time can change here. In time. time, you'll learn how to spend 5 minutes in a relaxation room and make it feel like hours. For now, it's time to bring yourself back. Just look at the notepad, allow the number 1 to just drift away. Just get on up, walk out of the relaxation room, and then when you're back, just open your eyes back into the present, into this room, which is the training room. Everyone draw a big 0 on your notepad. So who enjoyed that exercise? Anyone? Just remember your mics when you make comments. Just who wants to let us know a little bit about how that went for you guys? Anyone? Everyone's like, no, I'm too relaxed. You talk. Let someone else do the talking. Go ahead.
It was great. I actually went to a room that I don't normally think of as a relaxation room.
Okay.
And it became that for me, which was really an unusual experience. But the writing of the 1 was something more than what I expected that was unusual.
Cool.
And it kind of became something, and I can't describe it.
There's no need, as long as you can get back to it and you remember it and it was a pleasant experience. Did anyone else here notice how the way you think changed? Your thoughts came more easily, you didn't have to force them as much? Anyone notice that? Anyone notice how it just feels easier, there's less energy being used, you're kind of like more in a standby kind of mode, right? Can we have a mic over here?
What I was noticing, it was kind of funny for me that I started to pay attention to what I'm thinking and how I'm thinking, and that I can control my thoughts, and no one can affect how I think. So no situation or circumstance could ever prevent me from thinking in a certain way. It was very empowering.
Good, and we'll be making more of that as we go through. This is just the foundational point. Did anyone else notice how your thoughts, do you want to pass it back? How your thoughts were a little bit more in your control, a little less scattered everywhere and all over the place?
Yes, because the room that I went to is probably the most uncluttered room in my home, and I felt like I was unencumbered in terms of thinking about other things around me. And also it occurred to me that that feeling of relaxation I could have every day, that I could just, I imagine, every day going forward, feeling that relaxation in any situation.
Now, if you want to do that, and this is exactly what this is designed to do, this is partly creating a foundation from which we can build the other exercises, which will allow you to create a new wealth blueprint. But it's partly something that is very practical. And I do this literally every day. I have my notepad's a little bit about this sort of size, it's white colored paper. And then I'll mentally, if I'm just getting a little bit stressed something, I'll just mentally, I don't even have to bother closing my eyes, consider doing basically this. Get a little notepad, I get myself a nice big pen, and I'll do a nice satisfying, and just, sorry, I just enjoy it. I might do it again. Just the act of, I don't even have to do it physically. Just first I did it physically, I might have to find a notepad now. Because it's been so connected to the two, just doing that, I just feel a little, I like it. I want to do this again, sorry.
Yeah, I found it very centering. Like, it's just very centering.
I mean, some people like to call this a centering exercise, because it does. It allows you to stop being pulled all around the places by the world. It puts you back in charge, and once you're back in charge, now you can decide what stuff we're going to start doing with this. Does that make sense? Excellent. Any other questions or comments on the kind of stuff you did? Any questions, actually, about it? No? Do you want to get the mic?
Curiosity is getting the better of me. So, are you inducing alpha brainwaves?
Yes.
Okay.
So the sound is a especially organized one. I'm using, there's many different sounds that will affect the way your brain thinks. For example, some research on learning, playing certain music like Mozart and so on will help you learn more easily. That's because it's doing the same thing as the relaxation room is doing for you, right? The most efficient and effective way of getting there is this sound right here.
Right.
I've spent a lot of time creating this particular version, and there are other versions which put you necessarily into different gears, but for what we want right now, this is the perfect version. Okay?
Also, just so I can clear it from my head, are we going to be talking about memes?
These are the memes, the only memes we'll be talking about.
Okay, very good.
Okay?
Now I can stop thinking about it.
You're very welcome. So remember, I made you a couple of promises, and one of the biggest promises, if there's only one thing I managed to do as a result of this training, I hope to do a lot more, of course, then I would choose this, which is to show you how to achieve genuine financial freedom. Now, the first thing to realize about financial freedom is I didn't say how to be rich. I'd like to show you how to do that too. And I'll show you, and some of you will take a longer to actually be able to accept the ideas. Some of you will just run with it straight away. Some of you already are pretty much there. Financial freedom is different from being rich. Financial freedom means you never have to work another day in your life again. This is very important because there's a famous book that was written by Napoleon Hill. You may have heard of it, Think and Grow Rich. If you haven't read it yet, read it. It's fantastic. The problem with the book is, and the premise is, this is a guy back in the 1930s or something like that, 20s even, yeah. He was a reporter, got to know Dale Carnegie. Dale basically said, I like what you're doing. I'm going to let you into, I'm going to introduce you to my 100 wealthiest, super rich friends. And you as a reporter get to interrogate them as long as you want and find out how did they get so rich. What is it they're doing? Because the wealth of our nation, this is in the US, the wealth of our nation is in the mindset that allowed these people to become super rich. That is really the American dream, isn't it? And of course that's kind of become a bit of a fraud when people think they have to work hard and get an education and end up being in huge debt and all kinds of stuff. So he went and interviewed all these people and he found out there are certain mindsets that make you very rich, but there's a problem with that. He never found out about how to be financially free. So he became very wealthy in his time. And then, in his old age, Napoleon Hill almost died broke, almost died a pauper. The only reason he didn't is because an entrepreneur who knew how to be financially free first and rich second ended up hiring him and to do like his sales training for his organization and so on. So he ended up having a decent salary, not rich by any means, but he wasn't poorly off either. I'd like for you to avoid that mistake. There are many seminars out there that will teach you how to be rich, whether it's in real estate investing or in stock exchange and whatever. Some of them are scams, admittedly. Some of them are fantastic opportunities. But I suggest that, or I would recommend you think about all of those things as being worthless unless you're financially free first. Because all that you're doing otherwise is risking bigger. Does that make sense? Now, poverty in whatever way it comes, whether it's a middle class struggle but kind of making ends meet or genuine poverty where you don't have enough. I don't here think that it's a genetic disease. You're just born with the right genes to make money or not. Would it be fair to say that that's just not even how we think, right? Some people like to call it a social disease. What's his name? Muhammad Yunus. He's the man who invented microfinancing, microbanking, which is, he's an interesting chap. He was an economist lecturer in India. He took his students out in the field, saw all these women doing these fantastic handicraft works, but they were barely subsisting, and he didn't get it because they were selling them at decent prices. Turns out, of course, they couldn't buy the raw materials except for really at bad rates because they had no money, so they were given the raw materials, but then they had to basically pay most of what they made back, and they kept pennies for themselves. They couldn't get out of the poverty spiral. So in places like India at the time, poverty was a social disease. It wasn't that they weren't willing to work. It wasn't that they were short of ideas. It's that they literally did not get that basic break. Outside of a genuine third world country, that social disease of poverty does not exist. There are more than enough breaks in Europe, in North America, even most of South America, more than enough that people can be rich and super rich if they apply the right principles and strategies. As far as I'm concerned, poverty is first and foremost a disease of the mind. It's a virus, which makes it worse, because you weren't born with this disease. You were infected by it. You're infected by it by the very teachers that told you, work hard, get a good education, get a good job, and then you'll be rich. But think about the insanity. Would you ask someone who has never done a plumbing job in his life, in fact, never even used plumbing, how to plumb your house? Would you ask them for advice on that? No? How about someone who lives in the jungle, just has no concept of what electricity even is, would you say, can you wire up my house for me? Would you have him be electrician, play electrician for you? Now, I have absolutely, I'll admit this to you right now, I have zero medical training. Would you like me to give you a life-saving heart surgery or something like that? Anyone? So why on earth are we asking people who have no idea of how to be rich, how to be financially free, how to do it? Were the teachers in your school financially free or rich? No. Were the people that give you advice on how to make it in life, how to be financially free or rich, were they financially free or rich? So what on earth are we doing listening to these people on how to do it? I had a number of people tell me, oh, you can't do this, you can't market in this way, and this is not good, or this will never work. I said, okay, I'll listen, and they have very reasoned arguments. The problem is, it has no bearing on reality, right? It's an unknown little universe. So we've been infected by other people's thoughts and ideas about what wealth is, how it works, and how to get it. Does this make sense? It is a disease of the mind. Carry on.
It seems to me you're talking about it being a disease of the mind, and I'm immediately thinking of all of the things I see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And all of what is there is spend money, get in debt, use the credit card,
there you go,
charge it up, every dime you have gone. And you were talking about being in that situation.
I was.
Bills,
I lived the dream, baby. Only it was more of a nightmare than a dream. And I'll tell you more of my story as we go on, because it is exactly these things we have in media. Did you know, up until, I retrained as a therapist after as a lawyer, I'll tell you about it a little later on. Did you know that up until the 1980s, at least in the UK, I'm pretty sure the same is true in America, the cases of anorexia in teenage boys were virtually unheard of. It wasn't in the medical histories. In the mid-1980s, they started popping up. By the mid-1990s, they were frequent enough. They weren't necessarily as frequent as anorexia in teenage girls, but it was pretty frequent. Now, do you know what's happened in the 1980s? The only thing that changed. In the 1980s, people started launching magazines aimed at a teenage audience. For the first time, boys saw role models that they tried to be like. And whatever they were was not going to be good enough. Their self-image, their self-esteem was being attacked. And so they end up having the same self-esteem issues that girls do. And the same diseases come as a result of it, in this case anorexia. So who here is serious about becoming wealthy? I mean seriously rich and financially free? Yes? The first piece of advice I would give you is, number one, switch off the media. Just don't even look at it anymore. And if you can't do that, then have a big BS written right across your TV whenever you see something. It's fantasy, right? Even the news is a fantasy because the other stuff doesn't sell. There is a concept. My grandfather was a very wealthy man. He came from what's called old money. His parents were very wealthy and so on and so on. It's a whole long European tradition of money. The problem is, he passed away when I was very, very young. My mother married very young. She was she was 18, and she was the oldest of all the children. So by the time I was about 4 years old, 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, my grandfather passed away. All his children, except for my mother, were still in their teens. Here's what happened. Within a year, maybe two, they went from being one of the richest families in Spain to having almost nothing. Now, that's very hard to watch my family go through that. Even as a little kid, there were things that are happening at the time that, were interesting, to say the least. And one of the reasons for it is because, think about where did the rest of the family get their ideas about wealth from? Not from their father, he'd passed away. It was from a media that's giving you fake images, fake ideas. And there's a fundamental principle of how the rich think versus how the poor think, which will totally switch things around for you. There's a concept called new money, which is people who come into money suddenly, whether they work hard, they're sports stars, music stars, they start their own business and so on. If they have the poverty disease, even though they have money, the very best thing that they can expect to happen is that they'll make the money, they'll keep the money, and the next generation will lose the money. It's very typical that within 2 or 3 generations, all the money that was made before disappears. Why? Because the mindset is wrong. There are some families that are proven to create wealth generation after generation after generation. And that's because they take their children and they're actually educating them. The mind virus they're presenting at that point is the wealth virus. That's the virus I want to infect you with. And I can do that. And the reason I say that is because I have done it by sheer accident. Most people that have hung around me for long enough for the last 4 years have ended up starting their own businesses. And the ones that have done it in at least 2 years ago, in other words, have had some time to build up, are doing very well with it now. So I'm kind of like a wealth magnet. Yay, hang out with me. Now, I say this only because I see the world very differently. 2 days ago, before I came here, I was on the main island in Nassau. There's a hot dog stand I like to go to because the guy's just really friendly, a happy, decent chap. So whenever I've been working a little bit too much and I just need to take a mental break, I'll just go there, grab a hot dog, have a chat. It's very bohemian, relaxed, you know. It's kind of cool. I had a chat with him before coming here because this was on my mind. I'm doing this seminar, so I had a little chat about it. His eyes almost fell out of his head. Within just an hour of talking to him, his whole idea of how to run a hot dog stand was turned on its head. He now has a plan. He was up until 2, 3 a.m. the next night. I saw him on the Saturday before I came here. He was up until 2 or 3 a.m. thinking about all the things we talked about and how he can double his local population. The Rastafarians won't eat meat, so he's now got a way of getting them in. The cruise ships, getting the cruise line. He's got all these ideas and things coming through. Why? Because I infected him with the wealth virus. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, look at me, look how great I am. It's him. He did it. Hopefully he'll maintain it because there was only like an hour exchange that we had here. But provided you start seeing the world a little differently, it will happen to you. You will get to the point where you're so excited, you won't want to sleep at night sometimes. You'll sleep less. You wake up earlier in the mornings because there's just so many things you want to get on with. Versus how I felt as a lawyer where getting up in the morning was the hardest thing in the world. Going home, the only thing I want to do is just crawl under my covers and hide underneath them because the bad man, call him the tax man or the bank, were after me. And this time they weren't hiding under my bed where I could just conveniently get rid of them. But there's a couple of things you should know as we're going along. We all have been affected by this poverty virus to some degree. And you can be immunized to it. Hopefully I'll be immunizing all of you over the next 2 days. But there is also another factor in play. A lot of people have what I call a poverty guard. There is a mechanism in place in the mind that keeps you the way you are. And if someone starts bringing ideas to you that will change you, it'll pop up and it'll defend the old way of being, the old way of doing, thinking, and feeling. At some point, through the next 2 days, I suspect everyone in this room will feel something where they go like, I get the logic of what you're saying, but I may get frustrated, or I don't like it, or your head gets fuzzy, or you might get sleepy. These are all defense mechanisms. Do you want to know what the worst of all the defense mechanisms is? Because those are recognizable, right? If you suddenly start getting sleepy, or your head gets all fuzzy, or you get an emotional reaction like, you can kind of separate yourself from that and say, well, okay, I get it. It's my poverty guard. It doesn't like how an idea that I think is true is being changed, so trying to maintain it. Make sense? And in changing the idea is where you get the wealth. There is one defense mechanism that is the sneakiest of them all, and I had it, and it really screwed me over. Do you know what that is? Oh, yes, you're right, I've heard that before. I already know that. You see, the irony is, many of the things we'll be talking about here, I already knew. I'd heard about them in some way. It makes logical sense already. But I was missing some nuance. I didn't really sit there and really consider what the implications of it were. As a result of which, I missed the actual lesson. Anyone here know a smoker? Right? If you ask a smoker, do you know that do you think smoking is healthy for you or not? Do you think any smoker will actually turn around and say, no, it's pretty healthy for me, it's good, I'm doing it for my lungs, keeps me alive, you know? And this is not a stop smoking seminar, so we can, there's no kind of pressure, Mo. Just your reaction kind of gave that away. But just think about it. they know what the implications are, and yet they hide from the implications anyway. That's the only way they can maintain their behavior. Do you see where we're going with this? That's how people maintain poverty or maintain struggle in their life. Because they may know or recognize that some other idea might be good, but they're hiding from it. So this, I already know this idea, this, I've already heard that one before idea, that is one of the most deadly killers of changing the way you think and changing the way you become in the world. Does this make sense to you guys? I recommend, and I'll come to you in a second for me, I really recommend, I mean, you can do it the way I did it, which is the hard way, which is 7 years of I went through everything from literally not being able to eat it for a few days through to having huge amounts of cash, and it's all suddenly disappearing again and having it again. It's like, I went through a crazy roller coaster, and I'll tell you about it as we go on. I would rather save you that trouble if I can. And the I already know this defense, really be aware of that one. Go ahead.
Igor, I used to smoke years ago, and in trying to quit, I tried, multiple times and all of those things, and doing reading, I became aware that there were actually benefits that I obtained by smoking. Of course, I knew that it was, all the bad things in those things, and I suspect that there are benefits to these defense mechanisms, particularly this last one that you mentioned. You'll be helping us identify and wipe them out.
So just to add, let's use smoking as an analogy, as a great example. Smoking has many perceived benefits, and I use the word perceived very purposefully. You see, what smoker does is he thinks that smoking will get him certain things like relaxation, comfort, a social problem, all that sort of stuff, right? In other words, through the act of smoking, he's developed a mechanism to get into personal resources that non-smokers develop in normal other ways. So what they've really done is they blocked themselves off from a normal developmental route, and that's why they feel like smoking is going to be difficult to give up. It's giving up an old friend and so on, because they think all those good things can only be had through smoking. Does that kind of make sense, the moment? Of course, if all they do is stop smoking and they still believe that, then they will have cut themselves off from good things. And that's why quitting is very difficult for some people. The easy way to quit smoking, I know this because I ran a stop smoking clinic for some years, is when you separate the smoking habit, you make sure those resources, you open the doors open, so there's other ways to get into it. Now they'll have more ways of relaxing, more ways of feeling good, more ways of feeling socially in the right moment, more ways of thinking about life and so on, than they had just from the smoking habit. And the poverty virus does the same thing. The poverty virus is safe. Why? It allows you to fit in with people. It allows you to have excuses about things in life. It allows you to say, oh, it wasn't my fault, It's just I caught an unlucky break. And we'll look at a lot of these mindsets, probably later on today, if not later on in the program, because they are just as much an illusion. You are stronger. You are healthier, you'll be happier, you'll be more successful, and life will actually be easier without these excuses than with. But in the moment, until you throw those other doors open, it seems like it might be harder. And that's one of the reasons the poverty guard comes up. Does that kind of make sense as an idea? So the key thing to keep in your mind is, you have a choice. You can be right or you can be rich. Which would you rather be?
Rich.
Because rich people think in a certain way. Poor people think in a very different way. The middle class has attitudes of both. That's why they make money and lose money, make money and lose money. That's why they kind of balance out in the middle. What I'd like you to do, what we will be doing over the course of the next few days, is looking at all those attitudes. Already some of them are starting to come out, so that you can find out where are you in that cycle. Which are the rich attitudes you already have? Great. Celebrate those, increase those. Which are the ones don't you have yet? Which are the poverty mindsets have you fallen foul of? There's always going to be a mix to some degree, because we live in a world where we're social human beings and we're working with other people and so on. Once you get a clear picture of it, though, you can immunize yourself and only take on rich attitudes. Does that make sense? Now, I'd like to liken the journey we're going to be taking over the next few days. It is a journey, right? Recently, a few months ago, I drove with my girlfriend. We did a road trip from Chicago all the way to Vegas. It was kind of nice. We had a big old van and just drove. It was fun. What I didn't realize is, number one, the state is big. It's not small. And number two, the middle part can be very dull. But then I made a huge mistake. You see, I was driving, and then we're driving through Nebraska, and it's flat and it has a few tumbleweeds going across. It looks like cowboy country, just a lot of it. And there's not really that much going on. And I made a big mistake. I thought Nebraska is dull. How can anyone want to live here? And we were driving for hours. It's not a short state. Anyways, at some point during the drive, we pull off into a little town on the side because we want to have lunch. And at that point, I was embarrassed about my thoughts for the last 2 hours. The people there were so nice. It's unbelievable. I mean, complete strangers, people who I thought would probably likely shoot me rather than give me directions. They were just really, really nice. And we get into the restaurant, and the food was amazing. The meat was like, wow, it's worth moving there just for that, right? I suddenly realized there's a lot more to Nebraska than what I had perceived. Because all I was looking at was the scenery, and I was missing the real goal, which is the people, the lifestyle, the food, and all that sort of stuff. You see, in my mind, I was going towards Colorado. Colorado is an amazing state. It's beautiful, and big mountain scenery. You know, you get there, you feel like you just made it, right? You're in the promised land before you get to Utah. But you see, the mistake I made was, had I only looked at Nebraska from my driver's point of view, I would have thought that I'm going through nothing, and it's worthless, and it's hard, and it's a unpleasant place to be. I missed the fact that it's a good place. You can stop, you can enjoy things. There are genuinely valuable things to do there. And on the road to wealth, everyone is focused on Colorado, with what it looks like to be there, to have the boat, the farm, the private jet, the bling rings, and the stretched limos with 15 bikini-clad girls hanging out the end of it, and so on, right? That's what everyone's thinking is the wealth is. And what they're missing is that when you drive through Nebraska, you're already doing it. You've got to get through that phase to get to Colorado. And if you miss all the good things that are in Nebraska, chances are you'll never get to Colorado, because either you get discouraged or you lose your way. So one of the things you want to start doing right this moment is making sure that as the journey goes, because you're not going to be in Colorado straight away. Some of you are closer than others. You get to appreciate the fact that driving through Nebraska is not some hellhole. It's actually a great thing. That's where financial freedom occurs. And if you can't appreciate Nebraska, chances are by the time you get to Colorado, you'll be too tired, too bitter, and all the infighting you had in the car in between is going to make you hate the whole trip anyway. And no matter how good Colorado is, you'll never enjoy it. Does that make sense? So the way you drive for the next few miles on your journey are going to determine how you will be experiencing wherever it is that you want to get to. I encourage you to not make my mistake again. Nebraska is a wonderful state. If you're from there, I love it.
They don't call them the Cornhuskers for nothing.
The what?
So they don't call them the Cornhuskers for nothing.
Corn huskers. There's a lot of corn, that's true. Another thing is to do with perceptions in general. So this is the journey that we're on. And a lot of perceptions, a lot of things that we think we're doing actually works in the opposite way. Everyone recognizes what this symbol here means, right? And if I do this, you know that I'm what I mean there. So if you ask me a question and said, hey, if I ask you guys, are you enjoying the seminar, you're doing all this, I'm going like, oh, I made a mistake, right? Unless I'm in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, the symbols are reversed. This means no, and this means yes. It's really confusing. It really is. Yeah, don't you disagree with me? So the same is true of how wealth works. Imagine that you were playing basketball. Imagine you're playing basketball, but on a football field, and everyone around you is playing football. You think you're playing basketball, everyone else is playing football. What's likely to happen to you? Are you going to win a lot of points? Are you going to land on your backside a few times? Are you going to get winded and wonder what the hell's going on here? Right? Most people play the game of wealth by the wrong rules. So they think that everyone else around them must be cheating. They're not cheating. They're playing the game of wealth by the right rules. It looks cheating according to the rules that you're playing by. Now, by this, I'm not saying anything about, oh, it's unethical behavior and all that. No, no, no. I will show you how to get very rich, very ethically. In fact, the richer you become, the more good you have done for the world. So ethics is not part of it. It's the rules by which you're playing. And if you're blind to the rules, then you think that everyone around you must be cheating. How else could they make it? Does that make sense? It's because you're looking for the wrong signals. Your perceptions need to switch. You need to look, you need to learn the right rules, and suddenly it all makes sense. And when it all makes sense, well then it becomes easy. Now, just because I explained to you the rules of football, and you suddenly go, oh man, now I get it. That's why I got being dumped here and there, and why this hurts and this is broken and then I wasn't getting any points, right? Just because you know those rules, does that mean you'll be an instant football star? No, you'd have to practice now, don't you? I can give you the rules. I can't give you the practice. I can give you show you the experience and the tactics, but you'll have to actually experience it on the field and do it. Does that make sense? So we're going to switch your perceptions around, but it's up to you to maintain that switch and continue with it and play the game of wealth by the right rules. Make sense? Please carry on.
I have, I guess, begun this journey and have done some things to help in that path, such as get a corporation, get an LP, utilize the tax rules in the United States that are appropriate for that, and I'm able to, really take a lot of deductions that I was never able to take before.
Right.
But my congregation can't understand that. In fact, if I talk to them about it, they think I'm doing something unethical and
dodgy.
wrong, because that's not how they play the rules.
Right.
Yet I'm following all the legal laws.
Absolutely. And I mean, taxation is a great example because the tax rules will change every year, right? Some things you couldn't do one year, you can do the next, and vice versa. If they want to change the rules, that's fine. You're playing by their rules. It's not like you're choosing the rules, right? But then, let's put it this way. If we make an agreement and I stand up to my end of the bargain, does it mean you can change the rules at the end of it? No, I have to stand up to my end of the bargain. So we make a social contract in whatever country we live in. Taxation is part of the social contract. We will provide funds. You can do all these wonderful things. Usually waste them, but hopefully some of the wonderful things happen anyways. That is a contract. It is a social contract. You stood up to your end of the bargain, which is I provided what I said I would provide. Now you did up to provide what you were going to provide. Of course, then the politicians don't end up giving you what they said they would, but that's another entire story. So yes, and that's the smallest version. Creating a streamlined tax structure and so on. I encourage everyone to play the game by the appropriate rules. Right? We're not talking about any dodgy tax evasions. We're not talking about hiding money under your bed somewhere so the taxman can't get it. Everything is going to be above board. If nothing else, you'll sleep a lot better. And let's face it, there's more than ample opportunities to get very wealthy playing by the correct rules. You don't have to cheat anyone of anything. So yeah, I agree with you. But most people don't see that because they get, how do most people do? They have a day-to-day job, right? The taxes are automatically deducted from their pay package. They get no say in that, right? So expenses that it costs you to work, it does, doesn't it? You have to buy suits, you've got to get fuel, you've got to travel there, you've got to do all these things, right? For a business, there's business expenses which can be deducted. For a person who's employed, you can't deduct those things, which I think is personally unfair because you're spending just as much as a multi-million-dollar business or a little mom-and-pop shop business. They have expenses and they get to be allowed to run their business by deducting those things. Personally, I think that employees should be allowed to deduct their expenses too, but that's kind of not the way the current system works. So you have to play by the rules, right? The rules are there. In some ways they're unfair, some ways they're very fair. You still have to play by it. And this actually takes me to a very important point before we finish this section here. This is just the general groundwork, which is there's one really important principle to keep in your mind no matter what happens, right? Get the idea that life is fair out of your mind right now. Life is not fair. Life will never be fair. No one will make you rich other than you. And if you're waiting for life to be fair before it'll happen, well then you may as well start lining up in the poverty line because that's the best I think you can expect. Life is not fair. Nor do I believe it should be. I'd like to give an example very quickly, if I may. We'll use these things. If you're here with a couple, I'd like you to please swap seats for a moment so you're not sitting next to your partner. It'll be emotionally less intimidating as a result. So just swap seats a minute with someone. So I want to just hand you guys a bunch of these cards. There's one for a pair. You hold that one. You can hold that one. You can, you're with him. You can hold that one. You guys are together here. You can, there you go. You can hold that one. You guys are a pair there. You guys will be a pair here. And you can just watch for a moment. This is just kind of fun. Don't worry about some of the cards for now. That's just my notes, but I'll grab them back in a second. Here's what we'll do. A little game we're going to play. This is part of the game of life, right? The blue card that you're all holding, or at least one of you guys is holding, represents $100, right? You'll get it. You don't have it yet. It's like an IOU slip. But here's the thing. You have to share some of that $100 with someone in the room. Let's just say the person next to you, just for ease or of sake. Now, here's how this game's going to work. You will make an offer to that person or another person in the room. If they accept your offer, let's say it's 50-50 or 80-10 or 99-100, whatever it is, right? If they accept the offer, you both get it. So you'll get your 80, they'll get their 20, or you'll get your 50, they'll get their 50, and so on, right? You'll share the money. If they don't like your offer, they'll reject it, and neither of you gets anything, right? So either you both get something, or neither of you get something. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to make life really easy for you. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to talk to your partner. Now, this is not a binding agreement. You're not making a contract here. You're just saying, look, when the time comes to make a choice, if I offer you this, will you accept? You get to just air it out ahead of time, right? It's not a binding thing, but at least I'm going to give you a fair start on it. Is that fair enough? Let's just take a few minutes just to do that quickly. So just thrash it out quickly, folks. It shouldn't take too long. You guys all done? All right, you guys ready? You guys ready? You guys ready? Are you guys ready? They're still haggling in the corner here. They're still bartering. Okay, good. So did you all kind of have it's not an agreement because we're not bound by it, but you'll at least know that if you offer something, you'll know what the response will be, right? Let me just ask you, what was the kind of agreement you had here?
Well, we didn't actually get to an agreement, but I
Okay.
just asked her if I was to keep more than 50%, would she just automatically reject?
And what did she say?
She said it depended on.
It depended on. Okay, it depends. Sure. Carry on. 50-50. That's fair, right? 50-50. 60-40. Okay, that's relatively fair. Con? Oh, she feels left out now. 50-50. All right. Here's the thing. Remember, none of you are bound. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to play unfair in the sense that I'm going to let you be unfair to me. You can give your partner the money in whatever rates you've just agreed with, or you can give it to me and I'll only take 20. You can keep 80. Who wants to give me their blue cards? No. You can either offer to them or whatever deal you made with them, or you offer it to me and I will only take 20, which means you keep 80. So either you give it to them or whatever thing you talk to them about, or you give it to me and I'll only take 20 and you keep 80. You have no contract with them, so there's no agreement being reached yet, right? I will just tell you that if you give me that blue piece of paper, you keep 80 of those dollars. Who wants to give me that blue piece of paper? Anyone? One? You don't want to give that away? Why is that? You don't have agreement yet, remember? You don't have an agreement yet. There's no contract. Okay, fine. That's fine. Carry on. You really have it? You will you? You won't? You will? I can. So look at this, guys. I wouldn't. So I have made $60 by taking less. Now, the question here isn't whether or not, it's not ethical, I've got a moral contract with the other person and so on. That has nothing to do with this game. Think about it. You're going to get free money. You're about to get free money. And the only reason why you want to give 50-50 or 60-40 to the other person is because you don't want them to reject it. The thing is, if they reject it, why would they reject it? Because it's not fair. Right? It's free money. How is it not fair to get free money? If you get $1, you have $1 more than you started with. How is that not fair? Do you see the mindset? And some of you guys even got stuck in it, even when you were offered more for it. You still thought it was not fair. Why? Because you're playing by the wrong rules. I don't mind life being unfair. It's unfair to me all the time. But once you understand that unfairness doesn't have to be unfair, it can play to your advantage. I can take less and get more. It took me a long time to figure that out. I have an uncle, he's a genius, he's a doctor. He has ideas. He wrote a medical emergency book that is being used to this day in Germany and Austria. When I went, I had my finger sewn up once because I had a schoolboy error. I tried to decide to teach myself how to carve wood. Instead, I learned to carve fingers. I went into the emergency ward, and when they read my name on the sheet, they said, "Oh, do you have an older brother called so-and-so?" I said, "Oh, that's my uncle." They wanted my autograph almost. They really admired him, right? He has amazing ideas. Is he wealthy? No. Why? Because he's afraid people will take too much, steal his idea. He's thinking that if he gets offered 20% by some venture capitalist, that he's being ripped off. But think about this. I'd rather have 20% of $100 million than 100% of 10. Life is not fair. But it doesn't have to be for you to get everything you want and more. Does that make sense to you guys? So and it will happen as you go through, I'll come to you in a second. You will get into situations where you think that this is inherently unfair, right? Usually it has to do with government bodies like bureaucracies, that kind of, these weird machines that keep running regardless of what is quote unquote fair, it's just the rules, right? Or it's other people treating you unethically, right? It's going to happen, it's just part of how the life works. But if you understand it, then you understand the system of how it works. Then you can take that very unfairness and turn it to be to your favor. And then you can decide to distribute whatever cash you have to whoever you want in any way that you consider to be fair. Does that make sense to you guys? You have a thought?
Again, this is not about ethics or morality or anything like that. However, taking less by offering someone more so it's unfair to you and more fair to them is still more fair to you because of the example you just gave, that you actually are a big winner by appearing to be unfair to
But
yourself.
I'm collecting from everyone.
Correct.
See? I'm letting everyone treat me so unfairly that I win.
Correct.
So folks, please keep being unfair to me.
Correct.
But you see, and this is the other thing. If you want to get wealthy, if you want to join the super rich, you've got to stop thinking small. That's the problem with the hot dog guy. He's in a street of vendors, this long, well actually a lot longer than this, that was his stand. It's a long street full of vendors, and they all think so small. They think one hot dog, one soda can at a time, right? One of the reasons he was up until 3 a.m., because I got him to think big. Think about it. Everyone knows what McDonald's is, right? Yes? And would it be fair to say McDonald's is not short of a few bob? That's an English expression. It's not poor. It's doing well in terms of cash, right? Do you know how much a McDonald's franchise goes for? Any ideas? Between $500,000 and $1 million, right? Why would someone pay someone $1 million to be able to go and flip burgers? You can just set up your own burger stand and flip your own burgers, can't you? It costs you nothing, or it costs you the machine. Why on earth would you pay someone $1 million for it? Because it's bigger. Their dream is bigger. The system is better. We'll look at all those things later on, right? But if you think small scale, then every little injustice is going to be huge, and it's going to screw you over, and you're right. Life will suck big time. But if you dream so big, those tiny little injustices are nothing. In fact, you can ride off the back of them to do something even better, right? We'll get to the point to realize that every time something bad happens to you, you're going to rub your hands in glee because you're going to realize there is a tremendous opportunity to get seriously loaded because of that. Just like this 2080 example, right? I can get rich by allowing you to be unfair to me, and I don't mind. All you have to do, though, is start thinking on a bigger scale. If you start doing that, a lot of the things that are problems right now, they disappear, they evaporate, they cannot exist anymore. Go ahead.
Again, we're talking about games, and so by leading, the whole idea of going first and being unfair, I think is different than leading with, I'm going to be unfair to you, but you'll be happy because you're going to get something for nothing anyway.
Right. I mean, there's twists around it. What I'm not suggesting, by the way, is that you screw people over. The key idea I want you to get out of is this thing that life has to be fair to you, right? Now, I like treating people fairly. In fact, I'll reverse the equation. I'll give people 80% most of the time anyways, right? Maybe 56, I don't know. Depending on the context, right? The point is, I will over-deliver on my promises, because I don't care. It's fine because I'm still working on that 80-20 rule at this point. The thing that you need to do, if you want to, one of the problems in the poverty blueprint is the desire or the need for life to be fair to you, for people to treat you fairly. Those are the people who would rather be right than rich. Those are the people who would rather not play at all if they can't have exactly what they want. Right? Now, how old is someone when they're stuck at the level of throwing things out of a particular area when you don't get what you want? We're not normally equated with this sort of height and not sitting down, right? So really, people who think that life has to be fair to them, they're still working at a slightly emotionally stunted level, and that's where the poverty comes in. So what I'm trying to get you out of is not, this is not a case of business ethics. We'll talk about ethics and stuff like that for sure, and you'll see that the whole paradigm changes with that. This is about you as an individual. Get it out of your blueprint that you need people to be fair with you or be fair to you. Now, when people are, that's great. Those are great people to work with, to do business with, to grow fortunes with, right? Fantastic. But when life starts giving you lemons and so on, don't go, oh, that sucks, I've got lemons, I don't like it. I won't demean your intellect by mentioning lemonade at this point. But it is something that we must get our minds out of if we get our minds into a place where we can make serious amounts of income, serious amounts of wealth. Does that make sense? Any other questions coming? And I appreciate that because this is a kind of a fundamental part of going through. And can you see, by the way, how someone might very easily think, oh, I'm encouraging you to be unethical at this point, and hence little poverty blueprint comes up, oh no, we're going to defend this one. I'm not telling you to be unethical. I'm not telling you to screw anyone else over. I'm not even telling you to give people less and make them happy about it anyways. No. What I'm saying is, if life treats you unfairly, don't let that stop you. Because that's what most people do. There's a great story. It's written by one of the great German authors. It's called Michael Kohlhaas. It's the story of a farmer, I think it's a farmer, who gets treated unjustly. Essentially, he's just getting his plow horse back from the field or something. The local lord rides by, his horse loses a shoe, so he commandeers this farmer's horse, steals it, takes it away, refuses to pay for it afterwards, forgets that he's actually even taken it, right? This farmer is livid. He wants justice done. And the whole story is about the extremes he goes to get justice done. In the process of doing so, he loses his wife, his family, his land, his property, his income, everything. He ends up in jail on death row. Why? Because he wanted to be right. He's been treated unfairly and he's got to make it right. It's a wonderful cautionary tale. And this often happens when people are stuck on having fairness over anything else. Then they will sacrifice their wealth just to be right. Does that make sense? Personally, I'd rather be rich than right. So let's take a quick break here. Let's be back in 10 minutes again, and we'll carry on from there. Sound good?